"You're being ridiculous, Mia. Eric needs this more than you do," my mom said, waving the deed in my face during what was supposed to be a joyful housewarming party. "He has a family to support. What do you have? Just yourself." The words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood there in the kitchen of the house I'd spent my entire life savings on, struggling to breathe as my world crumbled around me. My name is Mia Reynolds, and at 33, I never imagined I'd be betrayed by my own family like this. As a nurse at Memorial Hospital, I'd spent the last 10 years working double shifts, picking up extra hours in the ICU, and saving every penny I could. When my parents faced foreclosure on their old house, I stepped in with my life savings, $175,000, to help them buy a new place. The agreement was crystal clear. The house would be in my name since I provided the down payment. But apparently, agreements don't mean much to my family. My stepbrother Eric, my mom's golden child from her second marriage, stood there with his usual smug grin. He'd never contributed a dime to our parents' well-being, always too busy finding himself while jumping from one failed business venture to another. But now, at 38, he suddenly had a wife and a baby on the way, which apparently made him more deserving of my investment. "We've already filed the paperwork," my stepdad George chimed in, not even looking me in the eye. "The house is in Eric's name now. You should be happy. You're helping your brother start his family." The casual way he dismissed my sacrifice made my blood boil. The beautiful colonial-style house I'd fallen in love with, the one I'd imagined as a gathering place for family holidays and celebrations, was being handed over to someone who hadn't earned it. Looking around the room at the faces of extended family and friends who'd come to celebrate, I could see the awkward glances and whispered conversations. My Aunt Sarah, who'd always been more of a mother to me than my own mom, stood in the corner shaking her head in disbelief. My best friend Rachel, who'd watched me work myself to exhaustion to save that money, gripped her glass so tight I thought it might shatter. "This isn't right," I managed to say, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "That money was everything I had. We had an agreement." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," my mom sighed, rolling her eyes. "You're a nurse. You'll save it up again. Eric needs a stable home for his baby. It's not like you have anyone to provide for." That's when something inside me snapped. Years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always sacrificed for others, came crashing down. As I looked at their entitled faces, I knew this wouldn't end here. They had no idea what I was capable of when pushed too far. Growing up, I always knew I was different from Eric in my parents' eyes. After my dad passed away when I was 6, my mom remarried George within a year. Eric came into our lives like a whirlwind, immediately becoming the center of their universe. While I spent my weekends studying and working part-time at the local pharmacy to save for college, Eric was showered with new cars, expensive clothes, and endless second chances. I put myself through nursing school, working nights as a CNA and taking out student loans that I'm still paying off. Every time Eric's business ventures failed, the car wash, the supplement company, the cryptocurrency investment opportunity, my parents would drain their savings to bail him out. I watched them refinance their house 3 times to cover his mistakes, saying nothing even as I saw their retirement slipping away. When they called me 6 months ago, desperate and in tears because they were about to lose their house, I didn't hesitate. I had been saving for my own place, dreaming of a small cottage with a garden where I could finally put down roots. Instead, I offered them my savings, thinking it would finally prove my worth to them. We spent weeks looking at houses together, and I fell in love with the Colonial on Maple Street. The realtor worked with us to make it happen, and I signed all the preliminary paperwork as the owner. "You're such a blessing, honey," my mom had said back then, hugging me tight. "We'll make this work as a family." I believed her. I wanted so badly to believe her that I ignored the warning signs, the whispered phone calls with Eric, the meetings with their lawyer that I wasn't invited to, the way they delayed the final paperwork. Rachel had tried to warn me. "Mia, get everything in writing," she'd said over coffee one morning. "I don't trust them to do right by you." But I defended them, convinced that even if they favored Eric, They wouldn't steal from me. After all, what kind of parents would do that to their own daughter? The day before the housewarming party, I'd gone to Target and spent hours picking out new decorations for what I thought would be my investment property. I bought fluffy towels for the bathrooms, cheerful throw pillows for the living room, and a welcome mat that read, "Home Sweet Home." Now all those items felt like cruel jokes, scattered around a house that had been stolen from me. Standing in that kitchen, watching Eric parade around like he'd earned any of this, I thought about all the nights I'd worked in the ICU, the holidays I'd missed, the relationships I'd put on hold, the vacations I'd never taken, all to save that money. They hadn't just stolen my savings, they'd stolen years of my life. As the party continued around me, my head was spinning. Guests were starting to leave, offering awkward congratulations to Eric while avoiding eye contact with me. I sat alone at the kitchen counter, staring at my phone, when Rachel slid into the seat next to me. "You need to call Marcus," she whispered, referring to her brother who worked as a real estate attorney. "Something's not right about how they transferred the deed. They couldn't have done this legally without your signature." Just then, Eric walked by with his wife Jessica, talking loudly about their renovation plans. "We'll probably gut the kitchen first," he announced, running his hand along the granite countertop I'd helped pick out. "Maybe knock down a wall or two, really make it our own." My stomach lurched. Looking around the kitchen, I noticed the folder of paperwork my parents had shown me when we first made the agreement. It was still sitting on top of the refrigerator where Mom always kept important documents. While everyone was distracted by Eric's grand plans, I quietly grabbed it and slipped it into my bag. "I need some air," I told Rachel, heading for the back porch. Once outside, I pulled out the papers with trembling hands. There it was, the original agreement I'd signed, stating clearly that the house would be in my name in exchange for the down payment. Then I found something else. A letter from their lawyer dated just 2 weeks ago, warning them that transferring the deed without my consent could be considered fraud. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Stop sulking outside. Come back in and be happy for your brother." That was the moment I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about standing up for myself after years of being pushed aside. With shaking hands, I texted Marcus. "Are you free tomorrow? I need legal help." His response came quickly. "Rachel told me what happened. Come to my office at 9 a.m. Bring all the paperwork you have." Walking back inside, I found my mom and George huddled with Eric in the living room, probably making more plans for my house. They looked up as I entered, their faces a mix of annoyance and dismissal. "Finally decided to stop being dramatic?" my mom asked, raising an eyebrow. I managed a small smile, surprising them. "Actually, I want to thank you," I said calmly. "You've helped me see things very clearly." They exchanged confused looks, clearly expecting more tears or pleading. But I was done pleading, done being the reliable daughter who always came through while getting nothing in return. As I grabbed my purse to leave, I heard Eric laugh and say, "See? She's fine. She'll get over it." I turned back one last time. "No, Eric, I won't get over it. But you'll wish I had." The next morning, I sat in Marcus's office clutching a coffee cup to steady my nerves. He reviewed the documents spread across his desk, occasionally making notes and shaking his head. After what felt like hours, he looked up at me with a slight smile. "Mia, they really messed up here," he said, holding up the lawyer's warning letter. "The deed transfer isn't just questionable, it's fraudulent. You provided the down payment, signed the initial paperwork, and there's clear documentation of the agreement. They can't legally give away a house that was meant to be yours." "But they already did," I replied, my voice cracking. "The deed is in Eric's name." "A fraudulent transfer can be reversed," Marcus explained, reaching for his phone. "And I've got a friend at the DA's office who would be very interested in this case. What they did could actually result in criminal charges." My heart raced at his words. Criminal charges? I don't want my parents to go to jail. Even after everything, the thought of them in legal trouble made me hesitate. "Listen to me," Marcus said firmly. "They stole $175,000 from you. That's grand theft. They committed fraud. And from these bank statements, it looks like they might have forged your signature on some documents. They're counting on you being too nice to fight back." He was right. My whole life, they'd counted on me being the understanding one, the one who would sacrifice without complaint. While we talked, my phone kept buzzing with texts from my mom, alternating between guilt trips and demands that I stop being childish. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked, watching me carefully. I took a deep breath. "I want my house back, and I want them to understand they can't treat me like this anymore." Marcus nodded and started typing on his computer. "I'm filing an emergency injunction to prevent them from making any changes to the property. Then we'll proceed with legal action to void the transfer. They'll be served with papers by tomorrow." As I left his office, I felt lighter somehow. For the first time since the housewarming party, I wasn't crying or shaking. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. I drove to work for my evening shift in the ICU, and halfway through, my phone exploded with notifications. Eric had called 7 times. My mom had called 12 times. There were dozens of text messages, ranging from angry to panicked. The last one from Eric made me smile. "What the hell did you do?" I silenced my phone and focused on my patients. Let them panic for a while. Let them feel a fraction of the anxiety they'd caused me. Tomorrow, they'd learn exactly what happens when you push the nice daughter too far. The next morning, chaos erupted. I was getting ready for my shift when Rachel called to tell me my mom and Eric were making a scene outside my apartment. Sure enough, when I looked out my window, there they were, Eric pacing back and forth while my mom banged on the building's front door. "You have to stop this," my mom shouted when I finally went downstairs. "This will tear our family apart." "That's rich," I replied, surprisingly calm. "You didn't worry about tearing the family apart when you stole my life savings." Eric stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You're being ridiculous. I have a baby on the way. What were you going to do with that house anyway? Live there alone with your cats?" "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I have the proof of our original agreement right here. Want to see the letter from your lawyer warning you this was illegal? Or should we talk about the documents where someone forged my signature?" The color drained from their faces. My mom grabbed my arm, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Honey, we can work this out as a family. There's no need for lawyers." I gently removed her hand. "We stopped being a family the moment you decided my life savings meant nothing to you. The DA's office has copies of everything now. So unless you want this to get worse, I suggest you talk to your lawyer about reversing the deed transfer." "You'd send your own mother to jail?" she gasped, tears welling up in her eyes. The same tears that had worked on me so many times before. "No, Mom. You might send yourself to jail. I'm just standing up for myself." Eric started to say something, but his phone rang. It was his wife, Jessica. I could hear her panicked voice through the speaker as she told him the police were at their house, their actual house, with questions about the deed transfer. They left quickly after that, hurrying to deal with the unfolding disaster. Rachel, who had been watching from her car to make sure I was safe, came over and hugged me. "I've never seen you stand up to them like that," she said proudly. "I've never had proof of their manipulation before," I replied. "Always just my word against theirs. But this time, I have everything in writing." Later that day, Marcus called to tell me Eric and my parents' lawyer had reached out. They wanted to settle. Not only would they transfer the house back to me, but they'd also pay my legal fees and additional damages. The threat of criminal charges had finally made them realize I wasn't backing down. "Should we take the deal?" Marcus asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "But I want them to sign something else too, a statement admitting exactly what they did. They don't get to pretend this never happened." 2 weeks later, I sat in Marcus's office as my parents and Eric signed the papers. The deed was being transferred back to me, along with a settlement that included my legal fees and an additional $50,000 in damages. But more importantly, they were signing a notarized statement acknowledging their attempt to defraud me. My mom couldn't stop crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while George stared at the floor. Eric looked like he'd aged 10 years, the smug grin replaced by a clenched jaw. His wife Jessica had left him after discovering he'd been hiding their own financial troubles. Apparently, the house theft was just the tip of the iceberg. "I need all parties to sign here," the notary said, pointing to the final page. One by one, they signed. When it was my turn, my hand didn't shake at all. "I hope you're happy," Eric muttered as he stood up. "You've ruined everything." "No," I replied calmly. "You ruined everything when you decided to steal from me. I just made it right." They filed out of the office, my mom trying one last time to catch my eye. I turned away. The time for guilt trips and manipulation was over. Marcus handed me the new deed with a smile. "Congratulations, the house is officially yours." But I had one more surprise for them. "Actually," I said, pulling out another set of papers, "I'd like to sell it." My family had already spread the word about their misunderstanding with the house, trying to save face with relatives and friends. They didn't know I'd received an offer from a developer who wanted to turn the property into apartments. The offer was well above market value. "They'll be furious when they find out," Rachel said later as we celebrated at our favorite coffee shop. "They thought you'd let them stay there." "That's exactly why I'm selling," I replied. "They need to understand they have no power over me anymore." The next day, I signed the papers to sell the house. The developer was thrilled, my real estate agent was thrilled, and I was finally free. The profit from the sale, combined with the settlement money, meant I could buy my dream cottage with a garden and still have savings left over. As I drove away from the closing, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my mom. She was crying, saying she'd heard about the sale, begging me to call her back. I deleted it without listening to the end. Some might call it cruel, but I call it boundaries. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to set myself on fire to keep them warm. Let them figure out their own lives. I had a cottage to furnish and a garden to plant. The weeks after selling the house were transformative. I found a charming cottage just outside the city, with a wraparound porch and enough yard space for the garden I'd always dreamed of. Rachel helped me move in, and together we painted the walls in soft, peaceful colors. Nothing like the bold schemes my mom had always insisted were proper for a family home. My phone still lit up regularly with messages from family members. Some were angry, calling me selfish for selling the house without giving my parents a chance to figure something out. Others tried guilt trips, telling me my mom cried herself to sleep at night. My Aunt Sarah was the only one who stood by me, telling the others they should be ashamed for what they'd done. "I ran into your mom at the grocery store," Sarah told me over Sunday brunch. "She was telling everyone who would listen about how ungrateful you are, but most people know the truth now. That statement you made them sign has made the rounds." I smiled, thinking about how the narrative had shifted. No longer was I the difficult daughter who wouldn't help her brother. Now I was the hardworking nurse whose family had tried to steal her savings. My mom's attempts to play victim weren't working anymore. Eric and Jessica officially separated, and he moved back in with our parents. I heard through the grapevine that he was working as a sales clerk at an electronics store, his first real job in years. Sometimes I drove past their rental house on my way to work, a modest place, nothing like the home they'd tried to steal from me. It didn't bring me joy to see them struggling, but I felt a sense of justice. At work, things were looking up too. Once I stopped letting my family drain my energy and resources, I was able to focus on my career. I applied for and got a promotion to charge nurse, which came with better hours and a significant pay raise. My colleagues noticed the change in me. I smiled more, stood up for myself in meetings, and no longer accepted all the holiday shifts just because others had real families to spend time with. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset and planning my garden, my mom's number flashed on my phone. Instead of the usual anxiety, I felt nothing but calm as I declined the call. Later, I listened to her voicemail. She was asking if I would help Eric with rent money, since things were so hard for him right now. I deleted the message and went back to my gardening catalog. I'd ordered seeds for tomatoes, cucumbers, and my favorite, violets. The flower beds were already prepared, the soil rich and waiting for new life. In a way, it felt like a metaphor for my own life. I'd cleared out the weeds of toxic relationships and was ready to grow something beautiful. Rachel often joked that I should write a book called How to Stop Being a Doormat in 3 Easy Steps. Maybe she was right. All it took was losing my life savings, standing up to my family, and finally putting myself first. Simple, really. 6 months after selling the house, my life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. My garden was thriving, with the first tomatoes ripening on the vine and violets blooming in neat rows. I'd made friends with my neighbors, joined a local book club, and even started dating again. Something I'd put off for years because my family demanded so much of my time and energy. The family drama hadn't completely disappeared, but I'd learned to manage it differently. My mom still tried to reach out regularly, especially when they needed money. Each time, I stuck to my boundaries. "I'm not in a position to help," I'd say calmly, no matter how many tears or guilt trips followed. The phrase became my shield, protecting me from their manipulation. Eric's situation had gotten worse. Jessica filed for divorce, and the baby, my nephew, lived primarily with her. She'd discovered Eric had taken out credit cards in her name, leaving her with massive debt. When she came to me for advice, I connected her with Marcus, who helped her navigate the legal mess. It felt good to help someone who genuinely deserved it. One Sunday morning, while I was tending to my garden, a familiar car pulled into my driveway. My mom stepped out, looking older and more tired than I remembered. She'd shown up unannounced, probably hoping to catch me off guard. "Your garden is beautiful," she said softly, hovering by the fence. "You always did have a way with plants." "Thank you," I replied, continuing to work with my plants. "But you shouldn't be here without calling first." I know. I miss you, honey. And I wanted to tell you that your father and I are selling our house. We can't afford it anymore, and Eric's expenses." She trailed off, looking at me hopefully. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. "Mom, I'm not giving you money. That chapter is closed." "I wasn't asking for," she started, then stopped herself. "Okay, maybe I was. But can you blame me for hoping? You're doing so well, and we're your family." "Family doesn't steal from family," I said firmly. "Family doesn't forge signatures or try to justify theft because one child deserves it more. You made your choice, Mom. Now you're living with the consequences." She left in tears, but I didn't feel guilty. Instead, I felt proud of maintaining my boundaries. Later that evening, I hosted a small dinner party for Rachel, Sarah, and some friends from work. As we sat on my porch drinking wine and watching fireflies dance in my garden, I realized something profound. This was what family really looked like. It wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about choice, respect, and genuine care for each other. "To boundaries," Rachel toasted, raising her glass with a knowing smile. "To growth," I added, thinking of my flourishing garden and my even more flourishing spirit. A year has passed since I stood up to my family, and the transformation in my life still amazes me. My cottage has become a sanctuary, filled with peace and warmth that I never felt in my family's presence. The garden produced so many vegetables last summer that I started donating extras to the local food bank. Sometimes I think about how my mom used to mock my obsession with gardening, calling it a waste of time. Now it brings me joy and helps others too. My career has flourished without the constant drain of family emergencies. I was recently promoted to nursing supervisor, and my colleagues often comment on how much more confident I've become. I no longer apologize for taking vacation days or saying no to extra shifts when I need rest. Setting boundaries at home taught me to set them everywhere else, too. Rachel jokes that I'm becoming a bit of a local legend at the hospital. New nurses seek me out for advice, not just about patient care, but about standing up for themselves in difficult situations. Last week, a young nurse thanked me for helping her find the courage to leave an abusive relationship. "If you could stand up to your whole family," she said, "I can stand up to one person." My parents and Eric still struggle, but that's no longer my burden to bear. They made their choices, just as I made mine. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people, and yourself, is to let them face the consequences of their actions. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about growth and self-respect. The money they stole was just money, but what I gained by standing up to them was priceless. My freedom and self-worth. The other day, I found an old photo of my family at the housewarming party, taken just before everything fell apart. Looking at their smug faces, I realized I don't feel angry anymore. Instead, I feel grateful. Their betrayal pushed me to become someone stronger, someone who values herself enough to walk away from toxic relationships, even when they're wrapped in the package of family. My garden is starting to bloom again this spring. Sarah visits often, bringing her grandchildren who love helping me plant new flowers. Rachel and I have our weekly coffee dates where we laugh about how far I've come from the person who used to answer every demanding phone call from my family. Even Jessica brings my nephew over sometimes. She says the garden has a healing effect on her too. Life isn't perfect, but it's authentically mine now. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. Every flower that blooms in my garden, every peaceful evening on my porch, every boundary I maintain is a reminder that I chose myself, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat.